All right, so this is take one. And of course, a car's going by, and you can hear the car. And I dropped my water. That's the first thing, is the land acknowledgement. Look at that, I dropped the water. I have to laugh, and it's just so beautiful that it happens to start snowing when I finally decide to do this. For the last several days, we've had great, beautiful, warm sun, but it was still minus outside. And now I choose to go and do this, and it's to tell stories. So it's perfect storytelling time. And the drum actually just made a little cracking noise. And I'll do my acknowledgement first for the land, because the land is making us make sure we know we're here. We rarely have sun snowflakes, and the breeze here that we're having right now, it's just so dead calm, quiet. You can hear the people down in the valley driving around, and we hear the vehicles for sure on the highway, and that highway is Highway 3. And so I'm gonna say bonjour, Ko'ona indigenous, bijou dodem, abata benishika, kwe indigenous, pegwas and dunji. And right now I'm in Wendell and Dunjiba. This is Kootenay land that I'm on, and this is known as the Salkirk Ranges, and this is the Kootenay Valley, and to the north of us is Kootenay Lake up that way. We just moved here, and we come here in the winters. My sister-in-law lives here, this property. And I'm with my partner, Ivan, who is also my cameraman and my fireman. And one day when we do these stories, we'll be doing them here. And I'm working on making my fire pit here, but it is so loud because of those guys. You know, I live right on a highway, and it's quite interesting. I grew up on off Highway 224 Manitoba, and here in my later years of life that I might retire here, but I come here in the winters to escape the cold of Manitoba, and I'm right on a highway. And so that's why we actually are all packed up here, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff with me. It's not coffee mate, it's a tub of tobacco, and I got these stories, and we're gonna go up the mountain here. And we're very lucky in Wendell. We're one of the last not even virgin forest, because this was all cut down at one point when settlers first came, and there's just a small stand of trees here, and we're just off Elsie Holmes Road, and when the wind comes through these trees, it's amazing, but they also mask the sound of the highway. So that's why we're walking up the mountain here, and I want to give a reference point for people to see and hear and watch the land and let the land speak for us. That's why I have my doll with me here. My friend Nikki made me this little doll, and it's a prayer doll that she made, and she wrote a book called The Land Speaks, and I've always supported her in every way, and she's so right when she says that. So this storytelling time, it can be the land speaking for us. We can just honor and respect these flakes falling, and I don't know if they pick up on the video very well, but I can tell you, those clouds you see moving across this valley and the veil that's there, that's the snowflakes. And the way this mountain, we're like a little amphitheater here. There's a creek that goes down there, and there goes the vehicle on the land making that noise, and the land is buffering it the best it can. And then you can see off in the distance there, behind the telephone pole on the highway is one of those trucker signs, and there's a T there. So that'll be our reference. You see how small that is? I don't know if you can pick it up in the video, and I'm not going to zoom in on it, but that's on the highway. And we're going to walk up the mountain now, because this drop right here, Ivan, how far would you say it is how big are those trees right there? That's about a 60-foot tree maybe?
30 feet.
30-foot tree, so it's not a very big tree. And then right there's that birch, that's the same thing too, is about 30 feet then. The height of those telephone wires is about 30 feet, you'd say? All right, so that telephone pole right in front of us, that can be part of our reference too for how high up the mountain we're going. How high is the telephone pole? We don't know. I'll come and look at it every now and then, so that's where you have to pay attention. The land is going to speak to you and tell you our elevation. As my husband lumbers up the mountain with my medicine bundle. We're gonna have a fire up here. It's a new moon ceremony, eh? So that's what we're doing tonight. So we're just setting ourselves up for that. But we'll share the story and the journey of up there, and the story of those things. But listen to the land speak, because it's amazing. Here in the trees, those snowflakes, they're just so gently falling down and quietly. I'll be quiet, listen. And so these trees are masking the sound of the road down below, but there aren't any cars coming. And here we are. Listen to the vehicles. But there's the telephone wires. We're at eye level now with them at the top of one of the telephone poles. Not quite telephone pole, but there goes a vehicle. And I'm gonna keep going in a circle every time I pause so you can see around where we're going. And we're going up the hill again. And you can hear the traffic. You can also hear the birds. And there, we're gonna pause again because now I'm gonna watch traffic and listen to the sounds again. And down there you can see the dump truck sign, how far down it is. And we're eye level with the telephone poles right now. And I'm a little bit winded. Are you winded? So I just climbed a telephone pole, people. From down there. Okay, so I'm tilting my camera down so you can see the angle that we went down. And there's those 30-foot trees. No, they're on the other side of those fir trees. Anyway, this next level isn't where we're gonna stop. But the bus stop is here. We call it that because whoever settled here first and made their way to, they made this road, and it's not been used for years, but they leveled off this space right here, and we call it the bus stop because lo and behold, there's a bus. And it stopped there. But anyway, there's camping stuff in there and whatnot. There's this. Where did you have the fire ready? Oh, I wanted to be up there. Okay. Is there stuff to have fire up there? Yeah. And a pause again. So storytelling. This is the purpose of this video is because Louis Riel School Division had asked me to do this, do storytelling, and I'm not a real good storyteller, I think, because I forget stuff all the time. But I'm also a very good orator, and I'm good at explaining things. And we watched this YouTube history channel, and it was about the storytelling and about myths and religions and societies. And the neat thing was that he explained things, something that I had a long time always trying to comprehend. These stories that I carry in my pouch right now, how the chipmunk got his stripes and why the skunk stinks, they're DVD stories that are written down and documented and approved, and I'll show them to you in a bit when I put my stuff down. And they're the stories that are told across the world, actually, and that's part of the drum teaching as well too, and the TP teaching of all the nations around the world. Each nation held its place, and Each nation had its own language, its own medicine, its own education, its own family dynamics, its own governance system. Each nation around the world. And so for the written word, it provided a very tangible, repeatable way of sharing information versus oral storytelling that once happened long, long ago. See how far up we are now that it's snow on the ground. Let the land speak to you again. It's just miraculous. We walked up 2 telephone poles just now. And you can't hear the traffic as much. And the trees still block the breeze. And so the snowflakes fall gently. And how about right over there where there's a pile of rocks already? So this is our first time having ceremony. It's new moon, eh? And that's another story. So I'll go back to the written word versus the written word versus the written word versus oral tradition, passing down from human to human the knowledge of one another. And it was done through storytelling and minstrels, is what one society would call them. We do our best to remember the stories and say them the way they're taught to us, the way our ancestors taught us. And once you write them down, it won't live anymore in the same way. It'll exist a different way, but it won't live anymore the same way. And that's the biggest story of all, is how you take something from the land, like say this rock or this leaf or any of this dirt, and it gets somehow turned into plastic. But this is the most amazing plastic ever, because the stories that are in here are both in Anishinaabe and in an English written word. And inside of them, I sure hope they're in there. I think I might have taken the DVD out. Yeah, I did. It's in my computer. But it's the book is in Anishinaabe, and you flip it over, and it's also written in English. And the coolest thing about this is where it came from. All right, there you go, you guys. I don't know if the website still works or not, but I'm just so proud and happy to share this resource with you, because it exists and there's lots of them out there. But don't listen to Nelson Publishers, because they really made a big mistake and forgot that Grey Owl was an imposter. So Nelson Publishers, I wouldn't trust their materials until they get their elders sorted out. And storytelling, when it's put down in this form, stays static. It doesn't change ever. It's the same story every time you put it in the machine, every time you open the book, every time you read the words, they're the same. But when you get stories from the land, like we're doing today, and letting the land speak for us, the chickadee calls and says, hey, listen, I'm here. And then the wind even speaks and says something to us, as we're going to acknowledge the wind blowing across the stones now. And my lovey's getting the fire going for this story today. Tonight when we do ceremony, even every time you make a fire, you should always grab your tobacco and give thanks for your fire and give thanks for all of creation whenever you make a fire. And that water fell down right away when we started this process today. So this tobacco was grown here down where we came up from. My brother-in-law grows all kinds of plants, and tobacco he grew, and he gave me my share for offering him seed, and he grew 100 plants, and now I have lots of tobacco to share and offer to my friends and anybody who needs natural tobacco to put in your pipes that's not had any chemicals. I've got some. I brought a little bit of food to make an offering. And I got my doll. And that doll was made by Nikki Manzi. I went to university with her. She wrote her thesis on co-management theories of traditional scientific knowledge, recognizing traditional knowledge keepers and land keepers. And that was back in the 90s. And there's so much I could tell about the doll, but I just brought her with me because she's part of my new moon ceremony tonight, and I just want her to be part of the blessing of this land and this space. So now that we got fire going, and as soon as my husband's hands are free, he's going to be my cameraman, and I'll be able to open up and share some other stories with you. And one of the stories that I do carry is the Sky Woman story, and it's an Iroquois story of creation. And it's in my bundle and it's wrapped around my pipe, and that's my bundle there. My pipe is inside there. And I was very fortunate to have a drum loaned to me for my trip until April, and so she's wrapped up in there, and so she's going to be woke up today, appropriately feasted and fired. And I greased her up with bear grease, and she sounds beautiful. So I said before, I'm on Kootenai territory. Yaki Nuki is, I think, how it's pronounced. I'm learning more and more each time. And I offer this tobacco today to give thanks to those people and give thanks for all these beautiful standing brothers and air around us, for grandfather. Thanks for that water down below, those 4 levels below our feet, the earth's crust all the way down to the core. And when we look up, there's four layers in the air to the stratosphere. And then our 4 cardinal directions. We give thanks, and we offer this tobacco to those who have come before us. Right on. I kind of feel bad for my husband because he didn't realize I really did want to fire up here. So he had the fire pit set up down on the bus stop level. But up here is where I'll come and do ceremony for something like new moon and bless our property. Because this little hill right behind me, we can go up another 2 telephone poles and still not get to the top of the mountain. And this is the end of our property here. So when we walked up 2 telephone pole lengths, I guess, this is the height of our property. So these stories that people tell across the world, prior to the written word, humanity existed for thousands and thousands of years, not since just the Egyptian writings and those things. Humanity's been around, and they pass things on orally. And so each region, the stories change because each reality was different throughout regions, and things got adapted. There's a commonality, though, in Anishinaabe teachings and Turtle Island teachings. There's those 4 sacred directions is one of them. There's 7 sacred direction teachings. There's 7 grandfather teachings. There's the White Buffalo teachings. And there's a commonality amongst them all. And then down in the Lakota territory, they have an eagle teaching, and it has to do with, that's quite similar to the 7 grandfather teachings. And so each society adapted, and each storyteller told their story from their point of view in their life and their understanding of life. And that's why it was usually the older people that told stories, because they were able to do so calmly and quietly. I'm learning that. Normally I speak really fast, and when I do presentations and stuff, I talk too fast, and And I don't know how much people learn from me, but they enjoy my energy and they always ask me back. But I'm learning. I'm really learning to honor my accent. The more I talk to my people, I talk slower, and patience is one of the teachings in Eastern Canada that you don't find in Manitoba. And it's because it was built right in.
Yeah, I got enough fire going.
So I'm going to pass this over to my cameraman now to hold it for me.
Okay.
Okay. And don't touch the buttons, because probably better to touch that side because there's no buttons. There we go. Alright. And I'm going to get my story blanket out. And I'll do my teaching. Okay. And so this is my teaching blanket as well too. I share with you my bundle because that's my storytelling package. This is how I've gone about my life and sharing the stories that I know. And it's through the drum and through my medicine bundle. I'm pointing down here and I'm looking down here. Yeah, but that's what I'm sharing today. And so this here is a teaching blanket as well too, and I got it from the island of Hawaii, and it was at a yard sale for $10. And real Hawaiian women made this, and they gave it to me, or sold it to me. And it's the waters and the fires, you know, just like Hawaii. And it's, for me, my moon teaching blanket, because the full moon is actually represented by the water. It represents grandmother, for me anyway, and that's my understanding of it. The new moon is the fire. It's about the men and creation. And so that's what the ceremony I'm going to be doing today. I'm smoking my pipe for that. And so that's what side of the blanket I show is this part. And what I'm actually going to be doing is making it full size, because after I put everything out today, or after the storytelling, we're going to come back tonight and do the ceremony. And I'll just leave things up here, but I'll be covering it up with the other half, so it'll be safe from any animals walking by and stuff. So in the ceremony, you know, we have all these different tools and ways to honor Earth and to give thanks for all of creation. And so that's what's inside our bundles, is those things that help, that we get to use to honor creation. Everything in this bundle was gifted to me, or I found it, or was offered to me in some way. Robin DeConti gave me this. This is my this is a tobacco, but it's a real birch bark basket, and I've used it for lots of different things. My sister-in-law, Ivan's sister, gave me this, and this is my sage container that I use. It's cedar box, but it's got the hummingbird on it. And the hummingbird, there's so many teachings and stories that come from the hummingbird, and so I keep my sage in there. And, this big guy here is filled with all kinds of treasures. This beaver hat my father made for me, and it's too small on me. I was 8 when he made it for me, or 14 actually, I think. And but I should have been 8 because it's small. So I use it to carry my precious pieces, and my daughter's business cards are in there. And there's a candle in here for when I don't have a fire going. And then I've got cloths to tie things up. And then my grandfather's and my other medicines. And this was gifted to me this summer, and I'm so happy to have received that, grandfather. And these are more rocks from this area. And this one here is the most important one. This one's all the fires that I carry. All this, not the fires I carry, but the fires I've been to, and I always make an offering of an ash to my fires. It's a ceremony. And then when I leave here, I'll come and take an ash and put it inside here. So that represents all the prayers and all the good teachings that I've been gifted in my lifetime. And finally, I bring out the one you've been waiting for. So this is the story blanket I carry, and my pipe lives in here. So we'll stay here for tonight, and now I get to tell the story of Sky Woman. And it's the birth of Nana Bojo too that I get to tell from my understanding of all of this. And again, that duality is shown here, just like my Hawaiian blanket of fire and water, man and woman, full moon, new moon, however you want to look at that, night and day. This blanket represents that same teaching. Because the same picture is there, but the colors are all reversed. And it's the rainbow of colors that are there. And this is the story of Turtle Island and the creation of Turtle Island. And it's the Iroquois version of Sky Woman's story. And that's what I'm going to share right now, is that teaching of Sky Woman coming down and all the things that are in there. And I'm not in a classroom, and I don't have my props and stuff other than the fire and the land speaking once again, because like I said, I'm so blessed to be here in open land, and this grandfather, thank you for illuminating our story. And so the story of Sky Woman, I'm just gonna let you use your imagination, because I don't have the books with me or anything. I have the blanket and the words. And so the story starts with the people before all of this beauty was here, before we could see, smell, and taste and experience this physical world. There was nothing here. There was just water and darkness. But up there was where the sky people lived. And they lived in beauty and wonder up there. And the beings that lived below had no knowledge of that. So you can't be condemned for what you don't know. But one night, this woman, Sky Woman, she was the chief's wife, and she was with child. And she had in that community, they had a great tree of peace. And everybody honored that tree, because in that community, that's under that tree they buried all that they didn't need anymore, that did not serve them, the weaponry of fighting from prior centuries before. And so in that community they honored that tree of peace. And so the Sky Woman, she was the chief's wife. She had this dream once, and she woke up and she told her husband, I've had a very, very strong dream, and I have to tell you this dream, because all the men and all the warriors of the community, they came and they surrounded that tree and they pulled up the tree, and there's something down there. And the chief listened to his wife, and he took the story to the elders and told the elders that his wife had this dream, had this understanding that there was going to be something happen, and that the warriors were going to pull up this tree. And then sure enough, the elders, they too knew a prophecy that something would happen of that nature, and that they had to honor this woman and work with her. And so everybody surrounded that tree, and they all pulled up that tree, and that tree was uprooted, and that underneath that tree the Sky Woman could see, and all the beings down below, all of a sudden there was light, and they could see Sky Woman looking, and she could see them down there too. And she kept looking, and she was so in awe, and then she reached in too far, and she fell in that hole, and those beings, they could see her. And the beings down below, the big one called and said, look, go catch her and save her, she's important, you have to let her come down here. And that big being was the turtle. He was the most ancient one there, and he sent the geese up to go and catch her, to keep her from falling too hard. And he said, here, put her on my back. And as Sky Woman fell, she was terrified. She was holding on the edges, and she brought with her, and you can see in her hands, she was holding some seeds and some grasses. And when she landed, she was so scared, because she knew she couldn't go back up there. And the people, and as soon as she fell through, the hole closed. and they're all in darkness again. And the animals and the beings down below, they comforted her and told her and thanked her for coming, because they too knew something was going to happen and that she was going to be there, and she came from the sky. And so Turtle said she has something, a gift for us, but she needs the earth that's down below, and this is all water down. There's no land, none whatsoever. It was all water. And so Turtle asked for volunteers, and right away Otter. And if you look down in the blanket at the bottom, you see these little guys. Otter is one of them right there. There's Otter. Otter says, I can do it. And he jumps down, didn't even listen, and took off down through the water. And everybody waited for him. He was gone a long time. Otter, doesn't listen, doesn't take, just goes and has fun, Otter? So he's gone a long time, and he finally comes back, and he's just gasping for air. He says, I went a really long ways down there, but I couldn't find nothing. And then Turtle said, well, Otter, you jumped in too quickly, so maybe we'll get Beaver to help us. Beaver, you take your time and go down there and go find that earth down there and bring some soil up for us. So down goes Beaver, and they watched him. And Beaver went down in his big tail, all the way down. They watched him go down. He was gone a really long time. And then finally he came to up, and him too was tired. And he said, I barely made it back. He says, but it's down there. I could see it, but I just couldn't get it. And I could smell it. And then Muskrat said, I could do it. And everybody looked around because he has a little tiny voice, and they're going, who said they can do it? I can do it, Muskrat said. And so Turtle says, oh, Muskrat, yes, you can go try. So you go down there, Muskrat. You go and get us that earth. And so down went Muskrat, all the way down. And he was gone a really long time. And then they start seeing bubbles coming up. And they were worried because poor Muskrat, it's his air bubbles. He must have drowned. And so everybody was kind of sad, wondering, well, who's going to go down there? And Loon said, well, I can go try. And so Loon went down there. And he brought Muskrat back up. He found a Muskrat. And Muskrat came up, and he was just about to expire. And as he flipped up onto Turtle's back, he laid down, and his little paws open. And sure enough, he had some soil. He had the earth. And Turtle says, oh my gosh, that's beautiful soil. Poor Muskrat, he suffered for us. And look, he gave his life, and now we have soil. And so Sky Woman said, well, here, I'll give you my gift. And as she laid her seeds down, the earth started getting bigger, and Turtle said, hurry, everybody, on my back, get on my back and dance with me and help make this earth. And so Sky Woman started her dance, and she danced, and they followed her, and as she danced more and more, that earth spread across Turtle's back. And that's how Turtle Island was created. And that story of Turtle Island comes from Sky Woman coming down, and all the animals working together to find that earth, to help make more earth, and then working together and celebrating and dancing to create Turtle Island. And then the story goes that the turtle sunk all the way down, and she went down and down. And the story continues that as she stirred and made her way underneath the ground, under the water splashed and made currents in the air, and electricity came, and Turtle shot into the air and became the moon. And then all that electricity boiled and boiled and boiled, and Grandfather Sun was created from that. And that was the teaching that I was told for this blanket. How much time is on that video right now?
33:40.
Okay, because that's the Iroquois creation story that I learned. And like I was saying, the written word, we can find it's written down in different places. And I've heard it in different places. And there's a little tiny card that came with this Pendleton blanket that told that Sky Woman story really fast in like a paragraph. And you can make these stories go on forever, and they can continue. For me, I know the story of Nanabush, and Nanabush came from Sky Woman's belly. That's Nookama's grandmother, and she was pregnant because Sky Woman was pregnant when she came down to the earth, and she gave birth to the first being on earth. But it was another woman, and that was Winona. And that's the birth of Nanabojo, and that teaching, and that's a Anishinaabe story of the birth of Nanabojo. And here, can you show the camera onto this little shell? That here is called a mega shell. That teaching of the birth of the Anishinaabe comes from that mega shell, but I don't carry that story. But I do carry the birth of Nanabojo story. I actually have a painting from Daphne Ojig that shows it. because Sky Woman was pregnant when she came down. She gave birth to Winona, and they were the only beings on Earth. And grandmother Nokomis, she would tell Winona to never face the west. As she was getting older, Winona was growing into a beautiful woman, and she knew the west wind, the west spirit was wanting her daughter to take her as a wife. And so Nokomis has told Winona, never face the west, always do your work facing other directions, and be careful. And of course, as young women do, and all young people, we make mistakes. And one day she was facing the west while she was working, and Nokomis wasn't around, and she was by herself. And sure enough, west wind came and kidnapped her and took her away. So when Nokomis came back to the camp, Winona was gone. It's not Winona's story anymore, so I'm going to put this back now. And so I'll tell the story. We can be beside the fire while I'm telling the story. And so Nokomis was so sad because she knew that west wind had taken her daughter, and she was lonely and quiet and sad. She prepared for winter alone, and knowing that her daughter was gone. And then at the end of winter, close to spring, she could hear Winona crying, calling her, Nokomis, help me, help me. And sure enough, she woke up, and Winona was coming from the west, and she was heavy with child. And Nokomis went and ran and grabbed her and brought her into the wigwam and kept her warm and helped her birth her baby. And it turned out she had twins. And Nokomis was so delighted that she had two babies, but one of them died, and then Winona also died, and so just the one baby was left. And Nokomis was worried because she knew that this baby was from the west wind, and she was so sad that she lost her one grandson and lost her daughter, and she was mourning, and she left for 4 days and put the baby in a bowl and covered him up with a wooden bowl and went to mourn, and she was gone for 4 days. She forgot about this baby in her mourning. And then when she realized she had this other child to take care of, she went back to her camp, and that little wooden bowl was still there, and she flipped it over, and there was no baby there anymore. And Nokomis started to cry again, and she was wailing and crying. This little voice said to her, Nokomis, what are you crying for? And Nokomis looks around, and she sees this little rabbit, and the little rabbit's looking at her. Well, Nokomis, what are you crying for? And Nokomis looked at the rabbit again, and why are you talking to me? Rabbits don't talk. And then the rabbit turned into her grandson, and it's where Nanabush was born from. So one of those babies out of Winona is a half spirit and half human, and he could shapeshift. And when he wasn't being cared for, he turned himself into a rabbit to survive, and he survived. So that's the story in the birth of Nanabush. That's the one I know. And so I've pieced them together. I don't know if it's right, but it makes sense to me, because where else did Winona and Nokomis come from other than Sky Woman? And that's the Sky Woman story, the Iroquois story of Turtle Island. So I've married them together. I don't know if they're right, but they sound right to me. And those are the stories that I grew up with. I grew up with the birth of Nanabush story, and then in my adult life I learned of Sky Woman when I lived in the East Coast or in Ottawa Valley. And today I get the great gift of being able to make drums, and this one I didn't make. This one was loaned to me, but I get to wake it up because it was made and never used. And so it'll be feasted today. It's got a fire. And I'm going to close with that one last beautiful song to give thanks. You can and so I'm gonna sing the thank you song. You know, when we sing songs, we honor the 4 directions. It's kind of like alerting the spirits that we're gonna sing to them, and then at the end I'll acknowledge all 4 directions again and give thanks to them. And so and when I sing the songs, I always go in 4 directions myself, and my cameraman doesn't have to follow me in the 4 directions. He can let the land speak as well too, and I'll let him decide. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you learned a little bit and enjoyed the land that we had to offer today, and a little bit of stories that I do know. Miigwech dinanak me shom sag, miigwech dinanak nok me sag, miigwech dinanak dan we maganag, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey aho, ahey 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 aho. Miigwech dinanak me shom sag, miigwech dinanak nok me sag, miigwech dinanak dan we maganag, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey aho, ahey 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 aho. Miigwech dinanak me shom sag, miigwech dinanak nok me sag, miigwech dinanak dan we maganag, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey aho, ahey 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 aho. Miigwech dinanak me shom sag, miigwech dinanak nok me sag, miigwech dinanak dan we maganag, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey 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 aho, ahey aho, ahey 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 aho. Oho. Migose. Nyoko. Alawan. Besito. Oho. And thank you so much for being with us for this last little while. And I guess someone else will say goodbye. I'm not quite sure how this is working today, so thank you.